Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Raz, and I want to welcome you to my channel, the Semi-Retired Samurai. And today is my first video, and I figured what a beautiful place to start my first video here in Waikiki, where I am currently vacationing to get away from the rain in Vancouver. So I want to really set this channel up because I want to talk and share my experience and wisdom being an entrepreneur and my love for travel. And ever since I was a kid, I always wanted the freedom to do things. And I didn't like being boxed into, restricted in the way I lived. And I found this at quite an early age when I was younger, that I really didn't like to sit in the classroom and sit still and listen. I always thought that my purpose in life was beyond what I was learning in school at the time, and I always wanted to be financially free, and that never left me ever since I was a young kid. Even at the age of 6, I knew that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So today I want to share with you the difference, in my opinion, from being rich and being free. So I think a lot of people confuse it because they see the person driving down the street with this nice Lamborghini, or you see the influencers now on Instagram, and they seem to have this perfect life with the fancy cars, the private jets, and living a life of luxury. And I've spoken to many financial advisors and people who actually issue credit. And what they told me was they found that a lot of these people who drove these fancy cars didn't really have a lot of money, and they actually weren't as wealthy as they portrayed themselves to be. In fact, many of them were in deep debt. So I always, when I was growing up, I always looked at people with all these fancy cars, and I thought, wow, they got it made. Or I see a young person driving a beautiful sports car, and I wonder, Jesus, what are they doing that is allowing them to make all this money at such a young age? Because I remember when I was in my early 20s, I was actually struggling financially and working 2 jobs, 7 days a week, and I really wasn't getting ahead that much. And so I just find it kind of strange that these 19, 20-year-olds are all making this large amount of money when the rest of us were struggling just to make ends meet. So for me, I always thought that I was going to, live in this big, huge mansion. I was going to do all these things and fly on private jets everywhere. And I thought that that's what I wanted as a young man. But as I got older, especially in my 50s, I realized that there's a certain amount of money that, for me, that I make, and it was just going to be enough for me. And really, I have a point where more money wasn't going to better my life or improve my life meaningfully in any way. So I decided that really I want to just live a life of purpose. I want to travel, and I want freedom. And that's what I really, really wished for as a kid, because growing up, my parents were not wealthy. We had to work all the time. My parents were working all the time, and we didn't go on vacations because my father, unfortunately, went bankrupt when I was 9 years old. So we had to all, as a family, my brothers, my sisters, we all had to go down to help out with the family business. And that meant any time we had that was free. So the weekends, time off from school, that was our childhood, basically. So I always dreamt of what it would be like to just travel outside of my city, because we never really went beyond the border of my city, and it was quite depressing actually, because as a kid, I remember when I was in school, we used to return from summer vacation, and the teacher would always say, "Hey class, let's write about. Hey kids, let's write about where you traveled, what you did during the summer." And I remember the kids all excited, and they were just writing down, I was spent the summer at the lake, or I was on vacation somewhere in Florida, and we had a great time with the family. And I would be sitting there with literally a blank sheet of paper, and sitting there for 15, 20 minutes, and I really had nothing to write. And the teacher would come around and said, "Oh, you don't have anything written down?" I said, "Well, my family can't afford to go anywhere." And I was quite embarrassed about it, and quite ashamed, because I felt like the oddball in my class, and especially being a minority as well, which really hit me at the core, because you're at that age, your self-esteem and everything, your world is so small, and I always thought that, well, we were the weird family that didn't go on vacations. We didn't go away to the lake to do all these little things that most families that I thought did. So for me, I said to myself, someday I'm gonna make so much money that I'm not gonna be denied this opportunity again to be able to do what I want in my life. And I thought that way for a long time, and then then came my 20s, and I moved away to a new city by myself, and I was back at square one again, and I realized that, wow, this is pretty tough, and I was working 7 days a week again, trying to make ends meet, barely paying the bills, and I thought to myself, wow, I wonder if I'm ever going to get to that point where I can go see the world and go travel, because I didn't have the money at the time. So fast forward, later on at age 35, after working a corporate job for 10 years that I hated, I was in accounting. My parents were very traditional Chinese, and they thought, well, you either become a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant or some kind of profession, but you're not going to become a teacher or a journalist or anything like that, because you can't make money in that. So I really didn't have any idea what I was going to do in terms of schooling. They knew that they wanted me to go to university, which I did, and I didn't like it. I was a C student in high school. I was a C student in university. I was a dreamer. I didn't know what I knew that I wanted to make money. I knew I didn't want to be tied down. I knew that I didn't want to be restricted. So when I told my parents that maybe I was thinking of a career in physical education, they said, "Well, you're not going to do that at all, because you're not going to make any money in that. So choose something else." Well, I didn't like medicine. I didn't have the aptitude for it, and I certainly don't like being in hospitals either. And being a lawyer, well, I'm not the type to sit down and just scan through legal documents and jargon. So they said, "Well, you got to pick something." So I decided to pick accounting, and that was a big mistake, because I had no passion for it. And so when I finally got out, I found a job when I moved away, and I hated putting on a suit every day to show up for work, and I ended up making ends meet by working at the post office, sorting mail on the weekends. So that's what I did for a number of years, and then finally I got a job at a software company where I was doing the quality assurance for the accounting component. And this was during the dot-com era. So I lasted there for about 2 years before they finally laid me off. And after they laid me off, I was very happy because at the time I had started to train in the martial arts again, and specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I told my girlfriend at the time that I was going to take time off and just spend my time training. So I spent the next 4 months just training every day. And she finally came to me and said, well, you know what, I think you should get a job. And I said, don't worry about it. I can get a job anytime. She says, no, I'm really worried about whether if you're going to sit out and not work for a while. Maybe you might not find anything. So to ease her fears, I decided to go back to accounting, and I got a job with the university, which was a good public sector job. Very secure, great benefits. And after 2 years, I was really, really bored, and I thought to myself, well, I can work here and get a good pension, ride it all out, but damn, was it boring. And I thought to myself, well, I was 34 at the time, and I thought to myself, well, I gotta put up with this for another 21 more years before I retire at 65. I couldn't see myself doing it. So at the time, I started teaching kickboxing classes to corporate women, and it was going really well. And I started to gain a really good following, and I decided to finally leave the corporate world forever. And I explained this to my girlfriend. Well, actually, she became my wife. And I called her that day, and she said, well, hon, I'm going to quit my job and teach martial arts for the rest of my life full time. And she was livid. She thought that I was crazy, and she was yelling at me over the phone, saying, how are we going to live? And I said, and she slammed the phone on me. So that night I came home, and I saw her standing at the door, and I said, are you still angry with me? And she says, well, I'm going to have to support you because you're going to do it anyway. So, and I said, yes, you're right. I'm going to do it anyway. So my boss called me, and I was on leave at the time for a couple months, and I was a week away from returning to work. So she called me and she said, well, Raz, we're looking forward to having you back. And when you come back, we have all these tasks for you. And I'll never forget this. There was a moment of silence, and I said, well, thanks, Yolanda, but I'm not coming back. And there was this odd silence, and she's like, oh, is there a reason? And I said, yeah, I decided I'm going to go off on my own and start my own business. And she said, wow, okay, this is a surprise. I never expected this, but you know what? I'm happy for you. And she was great. She was very understanding, and I still talk to her to this day. But I tell you, that was the turning point in my life and the greatest feeling I had. And to be finally free, and to be finally to do what I want in life and what I was meant to do. Because ever since I was a kid, I loved martial arts. It was born and bred into me at an early age of 4 years old. And I said I didn't know where I was going to go with it, whether I was going to become an actor but my father always told me there's no money in martial arts, son. Don't bother going into it. And that was a limited mindset because he wanted to do it, but he didn't make it in that business. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to go with my heart. And within less than a year, I made my first 6 figures teaching martial arts. And I thought, wow, I was over the moon because I never made that kind of money in my life. So I remember, my wife and I at the time we were taking in the payments from the clients, and I couldn't believe it. It was like five figure months that were coming in. So that was my start in entrepreneurship, and that's how I started my journey in this path to financial freedom, which is what the final goal was. So that's a little bit about my background. I'll probably share a little bit more later on as I post more videos and my journey, because along this climb, it was not like this, that's for sure, because you start up in business, you're going to have these ups and you have these downs, and I definitely had my downs, and so there was big challenges along the way, and which even cast doubt in me. So, but the mindset of the martial artist and being disciplined and knowing that your journey is not always going to be a straight line, and being able to get through these challenges. But I tell you, once you hit that ceiling and you're able to break through, sky's the limit. But you have to do it correctly. You have to have the right mentors and guidance, because there's a lot of people on the internet now that are going to feed you a lot of BS, right? And especially these quick get rich quick schemes, gurus. Those are the worst, because I have bought courses from people, thousands of dollars wasted on a lot of these people, and that got you nothing. So the thing I look for is patience. Okay, there's no such thing as get rich quick. Okay, very disciplined and consistency. Okay, because you're going to make mistakes along the way. Hopefully, I can help you minimize those mistakes, and then help you build the life that you want. Now, I'm not talking about creating a multi-billion-dollar brand where you're jet setting, private jets everywhere and living in these huge fancy mansions on your private island. I'm just talking about the regular Joe, who maybe it could be like a few $1,000s a month passively that you can make and change your life forever. Because for a lot of people, even a few $1,000s in addition to your job, is life changing. And hopefully down the road, you can leave your job like I did and start to travel and free up your time. But a lot of people, they start a business and they make enough money, or they make more money than their regular job, and they're able to leave their job. But now what they've done is they created a job for themselves, but now they're a slave to the business. And my father did that for many years. After he declared bankruptcy and worked hard, long hours, he continued to work long and hard for many years. And he didn't retire till probably in his 80s. And I'll talk more about that as well, because retirement's not all what it's cracked up to be. But the problem with my father and my mom was they worked so hard, but they still couldn't get away from the business until later on, much later on, when they were in their late 60s. So I always said, you can get back your money, you can make money, but you can never buy back your time. And that is so important. And I realize that, and I'm going to be sharing this with you in these future videos on the importance of building your solo business empire and passive income that allow you to go do the things that you always want to do, because that's what ultimately it's all about. And for myself, I always thought that, okay, I'm going to make, so much, and I was going to keep on making money. And I come to realize that, that was not that was not going to make me happy. The cars, the fancy cars, the bigger house will not make me happy. What makes me happy is to live a stress-free life and not worry about the bills, and to be able to go travel and experience and be around good people and friends. And that's what really brings me joy. It brings me joy to give back, like I'm doing in videos here. And hopefully I can inspire all of you to do the same. I'm not going to sit here and preach about that. Do this, and you will get this. That's not my thing. I'm just going to share my experience, and hopefully I can offer you some guidance on how to transform your lives for the better. Okay, so I don't know what else to. Let's see here. I'm just doing this off the cup here. Yeah, so that ties me back into what is the difference between being rich and being free. So being rich, I've seen this a lot of people, is they drive the fancy car. I'll tell you a story, okay? I went to this university with this guy, and he was always had a little chip on his shoulder. So he always liked to talk about his cars. In university, he had he bought himself an Acura Integra, right, which at the time was a big deal. And I didn't see this guy for many years, and I ran into him at a wedding, and he came up to me, and the first thing he said to me is, "Oh, Raz, what kind of car did you drive?" And I said, "Why do you ask?" And he goes, "Oh, just wondering." And I said, "Well, I'm not really into cars, right?" And I thought that was the end of the conversation. So when we're sitting around having the dinner at the wedding, he would try to integrate words to talk about his life. So he asked about, well, how's the mosquitoes around your city? And I said, well, it was not too bad. He goes, oh, my city, it's really bad. Because especially when I drive around my Porsche, my top is down. So we kind of looked at each other and I kind of looked at the other guests, and we kind of laughed about it, because I knew that, I didn't say, but I knew that his life was in turmoil because he was going through some really bad divorce, and his wife was kind of, sleeping with somebody else. But I thought that was really interesting. And what was interesting about it was he was an engineer by trade, so he worked for a company. And there's nothing wrong with it. He got paid pretty decently, but you're really not in control, because on paper. And I had a friend come up to me and they said, well, he's rich. He's doing very well. And I said, well, maybe he is, right? But we don't know the whole financial picture. But what I do know is that if he had lost his job as an engineer, well, he has no way of paying for that Porsche or finance it. He would have to sell either his house or get rid of the Porsche or find another job that pays the same. And that is a problem, is you're not really in control. And he shows up for work, he gets paid for that time, and that time he makes a paycheck, and that paycheck goes to pay for his lifestyle. Where it's better, okay, to own assets. So either you're going to save, invest it into some EFTs, investments, that's going to bring you a annual return on it, okay, which is normally for the S&P 500 on average is roughly about just a little bit over, I guess, 9%, which is not bad, okay, but you put a little bit of that, your paycheck in that at a young age, and you will probably end up with a very significant amount of money when you retire. The other thing is owning your own business. So if you start your own business and you can make it passive, maybe you own a business that's a bricks and mortar business, but you have a manager managing it, and you're not there to on a daily basis, then that is passive income as well, because you're making money as you sleep. Also, maybe a side hustle, maybe an online business that you can make where you're spending, not as much time, working on it, and just letting it generate you income as you sleep, as you travel. And that is ideal, okay? Because now you are in control of your time and how you want to spend it. And that's what the difference is. And I always say, people with a high salary are rich, but if you have a job, you're rich, but you're not wealthy. Wealthy is when your assets would generate income to allow you to live the lifestyle that you want. Travel, spending time with your kids. For me, I wake up in the morning, and if I decide I don't want to spend time at my business, and I want to go out for a walk, and it's a nice day, or I want to go do a hike, I can do that, right? I can also switch around my schedules anytime I want as well to suit me. And that is the ultimate goal. And that is what you ultimately want before you hit the age of 65, so you can go ahead and go do the things that you want. So you're not held down. For example, this weekend, my wife, she had to go to, we're here in Waikiki vacation, but she can only come for 1 week. And I want her to stay longer. I want to extend the vacation, but she says she had to go back because she has to be back in the office by Monday. Whereas for me, I decided at the last minute, I'm gonna stay behind here, and the only reason I got to go back is because I got to head back for Christmas Eve. Otherwise, the family will kill me. But other than that, that's the beauty of all this. And I realized this a few years ago, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is what I always wanted. So it's not, like I said, it's not about accumulating so much money that you cannot. So much that you don't really need it, right? It's about creating a lifestyle that fits you. So that's the first part. And high income and high net worth, those are the other things. Is a lot of people, especially in Canada, they're high net worth. We have millionaires, okay, in Canada, but they're house rich and they're cash poor. So you can have. You can be rich. Let's say you can own land and you can have $5 million worth of land, but your income, let's say, is only $15,000. Well, you're actually cash poor because you cannot use that land to pay for your everyday lifestyle unless you sell it and invest that money. But it's pretty much locked in there. So you don't want to be in that situation. You want to be able to have multiple streams of income that allow you to live a life of financial independence. That's what you want, right? Hopefully that makes sense, because I've seen a lot of people with high net worths, and they're cash poor, really cash poor. So it's not always, you don't always look at the high net worth. You look at what are their what are their multiple sources of income. So it could be, for example, you have a pension, you have your CPP, okay, you have your OAS, you have your business income. If you have a second business income, you have your investments that's generating income, or maybe you have real estate, revenue generating real estate. Okay, other than your primary residence, which doesn't generate you anything. So those are things that what I'm talking about. So it's better to have those that have a high net worth and have no cash flow. Okay, because cash flow is king. That is what's gonna help fund your lifestyle and your independence. All right, I think that is going to be it for today. I've talked long enough, I think, and hopefully for our first video, you got value out of this. And yeah, so if you like what you saw or seen, okay, then subscribe to my channel and hit the like button because I'm going to build this thing up. I don't know where this is all going to go, but I decided, you know what, I'm going to be consistent with YouTube, and we're going to see how far I can take this thing without stress, right? Because ultimately, I don't want to make my life more stressful, because right now I'm at peace. So I will see you next time. Please feel free to check out my next video, which will be about, let's see here. I gotta look at my notes because I'm not a guru yet. Okay, I don't have these fancy videos that all these young bucks do. Okay, so next one I'm going to talk about why I value freedom over money. So that'll be the next video. Check it out, and we'll see you next time. I'm Raz, the semi-retired samurai. Wuss.